I never meant to make it a routine, but there I was again, Wednesday afternoon, same corner table at the little coffee shop across from campus. The place always smelled faintly of burnt espresso and cinnamon, the kind of scent that clings to your clothes long after you've left. I told myself I came for the quiet, the low hum of the grinder, the way no one expected anything from me here. But I think it was her. She always sat 2 tables away, by the window, grading papers in that slow, deliberate way teachers have. A stack on her left, a neat pile on her right. She had a thermos she always brought from home, even though she still ordered a small black coffee here. Said she didn't like to be wasteful. I wasn't her student anymore, hadn't been for 2 years, but she remembered me. Remembered my order too, which still caught me off guard sometimes. You still take it with no sugar? She asked once, not even looking up. Yeah, I said. I wanted to add, because you said sugar dulls the taste of real coffee, but I didn't. I should have left it at that, should have kept it ordinary. But the thing is, when she looked up, when her eyes lingered a beat too long, it felt like she was grading me all over again. Only this time, I didn't know what answer she was hoping for. That day, the place was half empty. Rain had started earlier, light at first, but steady now, streaking the windows and turning the world outside into smudged outlines. I had my laptop open, screen blank, fingers resting uselessly on the keys. Every so often, I glanced her way. Not to stare, just to check. She noticed, eventually. Don't look at me like that, she said, softly enough that only I could hear. There wasn't irritation in her voice, just something between weariness and warning. My throat went dry. I should have apologized. I should have looked away. Instead, I muttered. Then stop being so captivating. It was out before I had time to weigh it. The kind of line that would have sounded rehearsed if I were smoother, but I wasn't. It was raw, clumsy, and far too honest. Her pen froze mid-mark. She didn't look at me right away, but I could see her shoulders tighten. Then, barely, her lips curved, not a smile exactly, more like an exhale she couldn't hold back. You're too young to be saying things like that, she murmured, finally meeting my eyes. I wanted to say I didn't feel young, that I hadn't in years, but the word stuck. I busied myself with folding the napkin in front of me into sharp creases, then unfolding it again. My coffee had gone cold, untouched. Across the table, my phone lit up once, twice. Unsent drafts, conversations I never finished, messages that would stay unsent. But here, with her, every silence seemed heavier. We didn't speak much after that. She went back to grading, though her pen tapped against the page longer than usual before each mark. I scrolled through nothing on my laptop, eyes dragging back to her hands. They moved slowly, carefully, like they were always aware of being watched. When she finally packed her papers into a worn leather satchel, she didn't stand right away. She looked at me once more, as if deciding something. Then she slipped her phone from her bag, tapped quickly, and left without another word. I thought that was it. Another almost moment, filed away with all the others. But when I gathered my things a few minutes later, my phone buzzed. An unsaved number. Are you still there? I stared at the screen, heartbeat uneven, wondering if this was the start of something or just another silence waiting to happen. I told myself I wouldn't reply, that if I let the message sit long enough, it would fade into nothing, like so many half-written drafts in my phone. But my thumb betrayed me. Yeah, still here. Her reply came quickly. Walk with me? By the time I stepped outside, the rain had thinned to a mist. She was waiting just under the awning, satchel strap across her chest, thermos tucked under her arm like it was part of her. We fell into step without talking, shoes splashing through shallow puddles. The street was quiet, just the hum of wet tires passing now and then. Strange, she said after a while. I used to walk this same route with my son. He hated it. Always begged me to drive. I nodded, unsure if I should say his name. We'd been in the same classes once, though we'd never been close. That was the unspoken border between us, his mom, my classmate's mom. He's in another city now, she added, softer. Calls when he remembers. A faint smile, the kind that doesn't quite reach the eyes. I wanted to say I know what that feels like, but instead I just asked, "Do you miss it?" She gave a little laugh, more air than sound. "I miss the noise, the mess. Sometimes I leave the TV on just to fill the silence." Something in me twisted at that, like I'd been handed a secret too heavy to hold. At her doorstep, she hesitated. The porch light flickered. "You want tea?" she asked. The words were casual, but her grip on the keys stuttered. I followed her inside. The place smelled faintly of lavender and books. A stack of folded laundry sat untouched on the couch. While the kettle hissed, I leaned against the counter, folding and unfolding the cuff of my sleeve. She poured the tea into two mismatched mugs, slid one toward me without looking. Our hands almost brushed. Almost. "Do you ever feel," I asked before I could stop myself, "like you're waiting for something that never comes?" Her eyes flicked to mine, sharp, surprised. Then softer. "All the time," she whispered. We didn't say more. The silence grew thick, but not unbearable. Just waited. I imagined what it would be like to reach across the table, to close the space. Then immediately imagined how wrong it would be, how reckless. She must have felt it too, because when she finally spoke, her voice carried a warning edge. People would misunderstand. "I know." My answer was quick, maybe too quick. But I didn't look away. Later, when I left, she walked me to the door. The rain had started again, a soft patter against the glass. I slipped my shoes back on, fingers fumbling with the laces longer than necessary. As I turned to go, she touched my sleeve, light, fleeting, like brushing lint away. But her hand lingered a second too long. I don't know why that moment stayed with me. Maybe because it felt like someone finally saw me. The next time I saw her, it wasn't planned. It never was. I was carrying a bag of groceries up the stairs when her front door cracked open. "You always shop this late?" she asked, voice low, like she didn't want to wake the building. "Easier when the aisles are empty," I said, shifting the bag against my hip. She stepped out, holding a small trash bag. The soft cotton of her sweater brushed my arm as she passed. Not on purpose, maybe, but it stayed on my skin like static. "Tea," she offered again, almost as if it had become our code. Inside, the lights were dim. A lamp in the corner, amber glow. She pushed her hair behind her ear, then left the kettle to warm. I set the groceries on the counter, watching her move, careful, practiced, like every gesture mattered. "You don't have to," I said. "I can go." "I know," she answered, but didn't ask me to leave. We sat across from each other, steam curling between us. I fiddled with the handle of the mug. She tucked her hands under the table, fingers twisting. She broke the quiet first. "You remind me of him sometimes." Her son. She didn't say it, but I knew. I tried to smile, though something inside me sank. "That good or bad?" She looked away. "Both." Silence again. Only the clock ticking on the wall, loud in the small room. I noticed a book half open on the armchair, a scarf draped carelessly across it. Evidence of her solitude. I thought about telling her, how I stayed awake at night replaying these small moments, imagining her laugh lingering, her hand steadying mine. But words caught in my throat. Instead, I asked, "Do people ever notice?" Her eyes sharpened, then softened. They'd notice if we gave them reason to. She leaned back, as if creating space. And I can't. The sound of footsteps cut her off. Heavy, deliberate, echoing up the stairwell. We both froze. Through the thin walls, a neighbor's voice drifted, muffled but near. She set her mug down too quickly. Tea splashed over the rim, staining the table. Her hand shook slightly as she wiped it away. "We shouldn't," she started, then stopped. I wanted to say I know, but I didn't. I just watched her hands, the way she pressed the napkin into the wood, slow, deliberate. When the voices outside faded, the quiet felt even sharper. She exhaled long. "This is dangerous." I nodded, though part of me wanted her to keep going, to explain dangerous for who? For her? For me? For both of us. My hand inched across the table, stopping just short of hers. The air between our fingers pulsed. She noticed, I know she did. Her breath caught. Her eyes flicked down. For a heartbeat, it felt like the world tilted towards something inevitable. But then she pulled her hand back into her lap, hiding it. You should go, she said, but softer than a command. I left without finishing my tea. On the stairs, I touched the banister to steady myself, heart hammering at what almost happened. A half confession. A near kiss. Something we both wanted and both refused. It was a Saturday evening, the kind where the air feels thin and restless, like the world can't decide if it wants to rain. I saw her sitting on the bench outside the bookstore, a paper bag of secondhand novels at her side. She wasn't reading, just waiting. I almost kept walking. Almost. She noticed me before I reached her. A small nod, an almost smile. You're out late. So are you, I said, sinking onto the other end of the bench. The wood was cool under my palms. We didn't look at each other at first. Just at the people passing, couples holding hands, a child tugging his mother toward the ice cream shop. The ordinary world moving as though nothing between us was strange. I saw you yesterday, she said after a while, her voice low. With that girl. By the library. I blinked. It took me a second to place it. A classmate had stopped me to ask about an assignment. Just a few minutes of conversation, nothing more. Oh, I said. She's just a friend. Her silence stretched. Then, so quiet it nearly dissolved into the air, doesn't matter. I shouldn't care. But she did. I heard it in the way her hand tightened around the paper bag, crinkling the edge. I turned toward her. You do care. Her eyes flicked to mine, sharp, vulnerable. Then away again. I can't, she exhaled hard, like pushing something heavy out of her chest. I can't be someone who waits by the window, hoping. I've done that before. With my marriage. With my son. Always waiting. It hollowed me out. The confession hit like a quiet wave. No sound, but everything shifted. I wanted to say she didn't have to wait with me. That I'd show up. That I already was. But the words tangled in my throat. Instead, I said, I don't think you see yourself the way I do. She looked at me then, fully, searching. My heart beat so loud it drowned out the street noise. And how do you see me? She asked. I hesitated, my hand twitching against my knee. Like someone I don't want to walk away from. Her breath caught. She blinked, once, slow, as though the world had narrowed to that sentence. We sat there, suspended. The streetlight flickered on above us, casting the faintest glow. She shifted, her shoulder almost brushing mine, the space between us collapsing in increments. Her lips parted, not in words but in hesitation. This is wrong, she whispered, though her body didn't move away. Maybe, I said. My voice was barely sound. But it doesn't feel wrong. Our eyes locked, unbroken. The kind of stare that makes silence louder than words. My pulse jumped at the thought of closing the gap, of making me almost into something real. But I didn't move. Neither did she. The moment hung there, fragile, trembling. And then she asked, quietly, achingly, what happens if we don't stop? After that night on the bench, everything shifted. Not forward. Not exactly backward either. Just sideways. For 3 days, I didn't see her. Not at the coffee shop, not on the bench, not even at her window where the lamp usually burned late. Her absence pressed against me in strange ways. I still opened my laptop at the cafe, still ordered my coffee the same way, but the air felt unfinished. Like a sentence cut in half. When she finally reappeared, it wasn't how I expected. I spotted her across the street, walking with a man I didn't recognize. Older, well-dressed, his hand grazing the small of her back in a way that felt too familiar. She laughed at something he said, but her smile seemed borrowed, too polished. I froze. A dozen thoughts clattered through me. Ex-husband? A date? Someone she was trying to let back in? I couldn't move until they disappeared into the bookstore, leaving me with the faint echo of her laugh. I didn't go inside. That evening, I walked past her door twice. The light was on. I almost knocked. Almost. But the thought of that man's hand against her back glued mine to my side. Instead, I sat in my apartment staring at my phone. Should I ask? Would that even be fair? My thumbs typed and erased the same message. Are you okay? Then, did I do something? Then, who was he? None of them sent. 2 days later, she appeared at the cafe again. Alone this time. She carried her papers, her thermos, her satchel, like nothing had shifted. She even caught my eye and gave me a small nod, as if everything were ordinary. But when I walked past her table, she didn't invite me to sit. She didn't ask about my order. She just bent her head back to the stack of essays, her pen moving faster than usual. I sat down 2 tables away. My coffee cooled untouched. Every so often, I caught her glance flicking up, not at me exactly, but toward the window, toward anything else. It wasn't distance, it was retreat. Later that night, my phone buzzed. An unsaved number. You shouldn't wait for me. I stared at it for a long time. She didn't say don't come. She didn't say don't care. Just don't wait. I typed back. I'm not waiting. I'm choosing. But the words hovered on my screen, unsent. I didn't feel heartbroken. I felt paused. Like life forgot to finish the sentence. The cursor blinked in the text box, rhythmic, relentless. Then I turned the screen dark and sat in silence, the message unsent. It happened on a Thursday evening. I hadn't planned to see her, hadn't even been sure she wanted me around anymore. But when I came up the stairs with my backpack slung over one shoulder, her door was half open, light spilling into the hall. She stood in the kitchen, back to me, sleeves rolled up, rinsing dishes in the sink. The sound of water running was steady, almost too steady, like she was keeping her hands busy to avoid something else. I hovered at the doorway, unsure. Do you want help? She turned, startled. A small pause, then, with dishes. I shrugged. With whatever. Her laugh was quiet, unsteady, but she let me in. We worked side by side, the clink of plates filling the silence. I dried while she washed. At one point our hands brushed over the same glass, neither of us pulling back immediately. Just that faint overlap of skin, enough to make the room feel warmer. You shouldn't be here, she said after a while. Her voice wasn't sharp, more tired, like she was talking to herself. I set the towel down. I know. She looked at me then, really looked, water still dripping from her hands. Then why are you? I swallowed. My chest felt too tight for how small the kitchen was. Because not being here feels worse. Her jaw tightened, but her eyes softened. She leaned against the counter, arms crossed now, as if bracing herself. You're young. You'll move on. Find someone who, don't. I cut in. My voice cracked more than I wanted. Don't tell me what I'll feel like you already know. The air's still between us. She blinked slowly, like the words had landed somewhere she didn't want them to. For a long moment, she said nothing. Just studied the floor, the counter, anywhere but me. Then finally, quietly, I'm scared. Not of you. Of what this makes me. I wanted to reach for her, but stayed where I was, hands gripping the counter instead. And I'm scared of what not saying anything will make me. She lifted her gaze then, eyes glassy but steady. You think this ends well? I shook my head. No, I think it ends real. Her lips parted, as though to argue. But nothing came out. Instead, she closed the space between us slowly, cautiously, until we were close enough that I could feel the heat from her skin, smell the faint lavender from her sweater. No kiss. No dramatic gesture. Just her hand resting lightly on my wrist, the softest touch, but more than enough. Her voice barely above a whisper. Okay. And I let out a breath I hadn't realized I'd been holding. Weeks folded into each other, softer now. The rhythm between us wasn't dramatic. It never had been. More like a steady thread woven through ordinary days. Sometimes we met at the coffee shop again. She still brought her thermos, still teased me for letting my coffee go cold before finishing it. Some habits don't change, she said once, and I couldn't tell if she meant mine or hers. Other times, it was the bench outside the bookstore. We didn't always talk. Sometimes we just sat, shoulder to shoulder, watching the world shuffle past. I remembered that night, the flickering streetlight, her question about what happens if we don't stop, and realized we never answered it. Maybe we didn't need to. One evening, I helped her carry groceries up the stairs. The bags were heavier than they looked, and she pretended not to notice when I overestimated how many I could manage at once. Inside, she set water to boil for tea. It struck me then how natural it felt. Not secretive, not dangerous. Just life. While she rinsed apples at the sink, I leaned on the counter. "You still wait by the window sometimes?" I asked, half teasing. She dried her hands on a towel, gave me a look I couldn't quite read, then smiled faintly. "Not anymore." And I believed her. It wasn't about confessions anymore. We didn't sit across from each other naming fears, pressing for answers. What we had now was quieter. A mug slid across the table, a hand brushing past mine as she passed the sugar jar I never touched. Her son called one night while I was there. She put the phone on speaker, and I caught the warmth in her voice when she told him she was fine, just fine. Later, after she hung up, I didn't ask if she'd told him about me. She didn't offer. We let it stay unspoken. The seasons began to turn. Rainstorms gave way to early autumn chill. At 8:47 one morning, an oddly specific time that stuck in my head, I caught her looking at me over the rim of her coffee mug, the corners of her mouth curved upward. "What?" I asked, self-conscious. She shook her head, set the mug down, and said only, "Nothing." But I knew it meant something. We didn't need big declarations. Not love shouted from rooftops. Just the quiet certainty of being seen, chosen, again and again in the smallest ways. On the bench one evening, she leaned into me, her head against my shoulder. No words. Just the weight of her there, and the silence between us finally feeling like home. I don't know if this is forever, but I know it's real. And for the first time, real feels enough.